Hi, this is Rich Kaufman, and we want to welcome you again to our studios here in the St. Louis area. And we have an interesting program today, and I think one that our viewers are really going to like because we're going to deal with a product that's really a significant part of high performance building today. And we're going to get into that, and we're going to welcome now our guest to the studio, Mike Chance. Mike,
Rich,
thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks for having me.
Mike, you're with VELUX USA International, is that how I say it?
Well, we have VELUX is a global company.
Okay.
VELUX, we have the United States part of VELUX, which is VELUX USA, and we've been in business since 1941.
Wow, that goes back a long time.
A little bit.
And the product that you bring to the high performance, I mean, there's more than one, we'll talk about them both, but you bring to the high performance house skylights.
Yes.
And our viewers will remember that in the interview that we did with Jeff Day, who was the architect for the Oasis at 8729 Lower Marine Road, which is a home that's being built here in the St. Louis area in a small community on the Illinois side, incorporates a lot of skylights. And the skylights that are featured, of course, are the VELUX skylights.
Sure.
And we want to talk about that today. But just for our viewers and for my sake, because I like to learn about it, tell me, you've been in the window business for a long time in your career.
Yes.
And then a significant amount of that time with VELUX. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've been in the building materials business since the early 90s, and then I came to VELUX in 1997. Been with the company ever since, and it's an awesome company. It's nice to know that what I do is actually beneficial to people. It actually brings in daylight to the core where they're either working, living, or playing, and it's very beneficial.
And that's 17 years or so, isn't it?
It is. Approaching 17 years. That's right.
Okay. One of the things now, most of our viewers know that I'm an old builder, both ways. I'm an old builder and I'm an old builder. but when building in the past and back in the day, skylights were something that I just kind of wanted to avoid.
Sure.
Because the last thing you want is to be called back on projects. And some of the early skylights that I knew about and saw created light in the house, but they also created another problem, which was leaks.
Right.
And talk about that, because that's something that I think when something happens like that, Mike, it tends to stay in people's minds even after it's fixed.
And you're right, Rich, that perception is reality. And I think that's the one thing, being in the business for over 70 plus years, the common thing is people are concerned about leaks. It's a hole in the roof in some cases. But we have to look back and look at the history. VELUX started making skylights in 1941. Part of our whole reason why we're still in existence today is we had an engineered flashing system that's superior to anything that you would have in the field. And let's go back to, let's say, the 70s. The first energy crunch that we had, a lot of people were putting in skylights, but they were putting in the plastic bubble skylights. And the problem there is a lot of times it required just the guy in the field to basically make his own flashing kit. And we all know, as a builder, what caulk and tar does over time. It fails, right?
It fails, separates,
right.
does those things.
Yeah, and so if that's the main key thing holding the skylight together in terms of keeping it leak-free, it's doomed for failure. Whereas on an engineered system like ours, the flashing kit's made by VELUX. It's engineered, it's a multi-layer process system where at the end of the day there's no caulks or sealants used. Therefore, we're relying on Mother Nature and water shedding principle and engineering, good engineering to make it where it's leak-proof.
So that handled that technology handled that problem.
That's correct. That's
correct. Then it takes a while for people to get that re-educated about it and get that out of their heads.
Absolutely.
That's a problem.
Absolutely.
The other thing that, and this is maybe again something that I just think about, because I have seen homes even more recently that had the bubble thing.
Yes.
And they all look opaque, like they didn't stand up. You know what I'm saying? You can't see through them now.
Yeah, and Rich, that's part of it is that acrylic skylights were used, and at the time it was an affordable way to bring in natural daylight. The problem is long term, it's not as good longevity wise. I always call it life cycle. It is a lower life cycle than what we have, and we've made the glass skylights since 1941. VELUX didn't start making acrylic skylights till the early 2003, 2004, and we mainly make that for our commercial use. We say that in a residential home, glass skylights should always be the first thing you choose because they're tempered. They have a coating for low E3 coating, which is going to give you the heating and fading protection that people are also concerned about.
Yeah, you mentioned that the technology behind the skylights. Some of that same glass technology is developed for windows in homes, right?
Sure.
When we talk about the glass part, is there much difference in the glass that goes into a high-performance skylight or the glass that goes into a high-performance window?
They're very similar, Rich. It's a good point because whether it's a vertical window on the wall or a skylight above, we always use very similar glass technology. Low E3 glass is a very common glass now, fortunately. It's better than the old days of having just clear pane glass that all the heat came through. The difference is on skylights, we have to abide by a higher standard because of things and concerns about hailstorms, breakage. So we use a tempered glass. Typically we have tempered glass on the outer pane. And the inner pane, you have the option of either going tempered on that as well, or you have a laminated glass like your car windshield. The laminated glass gives you better protection overall from fading, and it also has a 10-year hail breakage warranty when you use our laminated glass.
I know when car windows break, they don't create shards of glass.
That's correct.
Is that what that does?
Yeah, basically it's just like your car windshield. If there's something that impacts the glass, it holds itself together. The idea is you don't want little pieces of glass coming into the home, and typically on tempered glass, if it would break, it would be coming in about 1,000 pieces.
Yeah.
So that's the difference, right?
Yeah. That's interesting to me. You bring up hail, and of course we're for our viewers here in the Midwest, we're affected by hail.
Sure.
And a lot of parts of the country they are. And so in a hailstorm, what's going to not break and obviously if you get hail the size of softballs, you're going to put holes in the roof anyway, right?
Right. I mean, at that point, you have bigger things to worry about than a skylight. You have to worry about that hail actually coming in and hitting the occupant. Sure.
Yeah. But other than that, huge hail. Tell us about what kind of hail the window will handle.
Well, typically most of the hailstorms you see in the Midwest are either pea size or up to about golf ball size. And our skylights have held together real well for that. And that's the main concern people have is that will this fare the storm well? And they do very well in hailstorms. So you can go back to the 2012 hailstorm in St. Louis that we had significant hail. And overall, the skylights did very well. And again, there's cases where the hail might have been 3-inch or 4-inch hail. Certainly, there's going to be more likelihood of breakage there. But overall, when you look at the average size of hail, it's not going to be a problem. And then we also give the customer, at the end of the day, if they do with a laminated glass, we have a 10-year hail breakage warranty. And it doesn't matter what size hail. We're very confident it's going to do well.
Okay. And so if they have that kind of hail, they're going to be replacing the roof, replacing their windows, probably all at the same time if they have that big giant hail. That's interesting. I know that you've been in this, and we just talked about with VELUX for 17 years.
Coming up on 17.
And you've seen some changes in the skylights over that period of time.
Sure.
Even with a company that's as advanced and sophisticated in the building of skylights. What are you seeing now in the last few years?
Well, it's interesting you point that out. That VELUX. Just so you know, VELUX means ventilation and light. It's 2 Latin words.
And you told me that off camera today, and it's the first time I put that together. I don't know why, but I never asked. But that name VELUX is significant. Ventilation and
light.
Light, okay.
So when we look at it, Rich, a lot of times people will pick our fixed skylight because fixed seems safe. But if you look at our record, we've started making venting skylights in 1941. We didn't have our fixed skylight till we came into the United States in the mid-70s. So if you look at our record, that's why the name VELUX ventilation light's important when people think of, well, I don't know if I should go with the venting skylight because I'm concerned about potential leaks because they think about the sunroof on their old Chevy Vega maybe. Well, we don't want to talk about Chevy Vegas, but show my age.
Yeah, okay.
But the point is that you know, people think of if something opens on the roof, there's more potential for leakage. But knowing that VELUX specializes in venting skylights, that should give them peace of mind, knowing that that's a good, safe bet. When they choose a venting skylight, that's going to be fine.
And you say they were doing venting skylights since they started.
That's correct.
And they started in Europe, right?
Copenhagen, Denmark.
Okay.
Yes.
So people, when they started doing that, were using that to help cool the house, correct?
That's correct. And that's the main feature why ventilation through the roof makes sense. As you think about back in the old days in South St. Louis where I grew up, that we didn't have air conditioning. If we did, it was very limited. So we utilized whole house fans. We had convection airflow working for us. So we had the window open on the wall. We'd have the attic vent fan open up on the ceiling, and it created about a 10-degree drop in temperature. So when people in St. Louis, and I've lived here all my life, say we go from heating to cooling, it's something to think about. Convection airflow is your best friend.
Yeah.
But it's understanding that hotter goes up, cooler goes down, that people aren't really necessarily familiar with that. And so when they think about how can I cut the cooling bill of my house, well, that's one way to do it, through the roof, through a skylight. So we've started making solar-powered venting skylights that requires no wiring. It's all run by the sun. The sun powers the skylight. It's all controlled by remote control. And so people could then actually utilize, just like in the house we're talking about that's under construction now, that's what they're doing. They're utilizing the window on the wall. They're utilizing the skylight, and that convection airflow is going to help cool the house down to reduce the number of days they have the air conditioning on.
That is just so cool. When we're talking high performance, we talk about how everything has to work together.
That's right.
To make a house perform. And just those days that are in between. Now this house at 8729 has geothermal, and it has hydronics, so there is a heat in the floors of the house. And then in the time when they need air conditioning, they have cool air blowing through vents. But in that space in between, without using any energy,
right,
they can open their skylights and create that. We talked about, with our viewers, we talked about the chimney effect of what happens in your attic.
Yes.
If you have a vent ridge and you have vented soffit, just that chimney effect will take some of the heat out of the attic of the house.
That's correct. Yep.
Now we're not in the attic, we're down in that box that we talk about all the time that we're living in.
Right.
But as you said correctly, heat doesn't rise, hot air rises.
That's correct.
And so if you have windows opened down at the lower level of the house, and you have your skylights open, you get that same effect in the house.
That's correct.
And it takes that heated air up and out.
Absolutely.
So, and it didn't cost anything to do that.
That's right. That's right.
And you mentioned if that is solar powered that operates it,
Yep.
that didn't cost anything either, did it?
No, the sun's taking care of you on the power, so there's literally no wiring, and you're not using energy. I always like to say in high performance building, as you well know, we're letting the building work for us versus us working for the building. I always like to say that.
Yeah, that's cool. The idea of the solar, that's only been on the scene, what, about 3 years or so?
Well, we actually started making them over in Europe first about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And then we brought the technology over to our American plant. Everything that you see in the VELUX catalog is made in Greenwood, South Carolina.
Okay.
So it's an American-made product by Americans. Okay. And with that technology, we've now fully produced the product over in Greenwood, South Carolina. And we've had great success with it. People understand, they're understanding now that, wow, I can actually utilize my windows already that are there, and just by adding a venting skylight in a bathroom, maybe it's a great room where there's a lot of trapped heat, as you know, especially these 30-foot tall ceilings. You think about all the heat in there. But adding that skylight, people are seeing the benefits of that, and it's just amazing. And
I've seen that, we mentioned earlier in another interview, I think when we did the interview with our architect, Jeff Day, we mentioned the active house in Webster Groves, and you guys were very, very involved, and VELUX is involved in active house all over the world, right? I mean, in
Yeah,
Europe.
we're one of many partners, and it's kind of, I like to say that the Active House project is really a culmination of like-minded individuals, architects, builders, manufacturers, everybody that comes together, and they really want to make the house a more efficient home, a high-performance home. It's the European version of the American green building concept. Is what it is. Yeah.
So in that, you know, we saw when we went through there, and we got to meet some of the folks from Denmark, and in Europe, they're very, very conscious of energy efficiency and sustainability. And in a lot of ways, they have to be. They have to use all the resources they've got.
Absolutely.
They don't have cheap power.
Yes.
And so they have to figure out other ways to get it done.
Yes.
And I like that they're sharing the technology there, bringing it over. You're building an American product,
yes,
but we all benefit from that. It's kind of a mutually beneficial kind of thing, I see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when what I started to say earlier about the Active House, I saw those windows operate.
Yes.
And it was like having a TV remote control that you didn't have to, you know, get up and crank anything. You just did it with, explain that, the remote.
Well, you know, obviously we think about Venting Skylights being a long-term company that we are. Years ago, and over in Europe, they use what they call the attic roof concept. And so it's the idea that their roof windows are designed for in-reach applications, like in a bonus room, and they take advantage of square footage from the bottom to the top. So there's no wasted space. So in there, the roof window is something you can reach, you can open, and that's where we call the roof window. It's easy access for egress. When it comes to a skylight, they would be out of reach.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but would that be like, to us, a dormer?
Very similar to a dormer, except that the roof window follows the slope of the roof, where a dormer you're building out.
Okay.
So it's a very more cost-effective approach to a dormer. Yet it's probably the least discovered item that we have in our catalog. It's been around the longest. We've made those since 1941, the operable roof window.
Yeah.
But it's still something that's fairly in the American market. There's still a lot of homes that are built today where that attic space is, because we're using scissor truss, is somewhat wasted. And so it's a real simple concept of changing to maybe an attic truss system, and then you can utilize that space as living space.
And you mentioned that when we were talking about getting these open. If you're right there in the room and you can reach them, that's one thing.
Right.
But if they're 30 feet up,
that's a whole other
that's
battle.
another thing. And so that's where your remote thing comes into play. Is that right?
Absolutely. And you could certainly look at, we have manual pole operated, so manually crank type skylights. But when you're 30 feet in the air, that doesn't work real well.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we provide a nice touchpad type remote. Very similar to what you'd see in your other mobile devices and things of that nature. It's what people are used to. So it's a touchpad technology, but it gives you the full controllability of programming the skylight to open and close anytime you want. There's also sunscreening devices that can be controlled off the same remote. You can go on a vacation mode where you can actually hit one button, program it to actually close down when you know you're going on vacation. The skylights will automatically close. Wow. So very convenient.
That's the smart technology.
It is. Yep.
Being linked up with your product.
That's right.
There was something else, and I'm just trying to remember this, but it seemed like I saw that if, say, you went to work, you're coming home in the evening, and you got your skylights open, but it started to rain.
Right.
There was kind of a neat deal about that.
Yeah, that's a neat technology as well, and that's built into the solar panel on the solar-powered skylight. It's a rain sensor. And so the rain sensor is very similar to BMW and a couple other companies that take advantage of it's audibly listening for rain. As soon as it hears rain, it's going to close the skylight automatically for the customer. So very convenient. I always like to call it the marriage saver feature. So very neat.
That technology is there. Excuse me. One of the aspects of the solar, doesn't that have some tax credits tied to it? For a while anyway, as long as they last in this part of the...
Yeah, and I think, Rich, that's a good point, that the solar tax credit is anything solar. So our skylight, the solar-powered skylight, does qualify for a 30% federal solar tax credit. It's not like the Energy Star tax credits that went away a couple years ago. And this is good until the end of 2016. So somebody that's looking at a venting solar-powered skylight, 30% is actually the product and the installation cost. So it's the total cost to put it in that you can qualify for that 30% tax credit through the government.
Just to clarify that a little bit, you got a solar device or a photovoltaic thing or whatever, it's collecting the solar, and then you got the window itself and all of its mechanisms and the installation, so you can add all those costs up and get 30% tax credit on the total.
That's correct. And it's not a rebate, it's a tax credit.
Yeah.
So just so people understand that they won't get a check back from the government.
Yeah.
You have to pay taxes to get the tax credit.
Okay.
That's right.
But you get to take it off.
You get to take it, write it off of your taxes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's
yes.
neat.
Yeah.
Cool. Mike, we've talked about a lot of different things that are, dealing with the skylight.
Sure.
And one of the things that when we were talking in the interview with the architect on this project, he talked a lot about daylighting. He used that term. And I know that what you bring to the process has a great deal to do with that. And I know you know a lot more about that than I do. So would you talk about that some?
Sure.
What that term, in the case with the architect, he talked about windows high on a wall, bringing the light farther into the room. But he also talked about the significance of the skylights. But he didn't go into the detail that you probably can. So
I'd be glad to. And the thing we think about is in a house, the goal with daylighting in general is that at the end of the day, if you can walk through your house and never turn a light on during the day, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I think I mentioned that about the house in Webster Groves that we talked about, that I noticed that you could walk through the house and not have to have any lights on.
Sure.
It was the daytime, but I mean, it was bright, but not glary bright, just bright.
And I think it's important to point out that, it's not one thing is better than the other, putting in windows only versus putting in skylights only. It's a marriage of both, just like the house. Everything works together. And so when you have daylighting coming from two sources, vertically and above, the thing you think about is a skylight can give you twice the amount of daylight as any vertical window. But does that mean you get rid of the vertical window? No. What skylights can do is light the core of the home, where a window typically, once it gets to a certain point of the house, it loses that flare of light. And so we look back in the 70s and maybe 80s, that period when people were using the plastic bubble, and they said, oh, those things leak, and they took them out. Well, a lot of times the builder would go to just conventional framed house with regular windows. The thing is that those homes are very dark. So if you were to turn all the lights out in the home, you look at a daylighting expert, he'll go into the house and turn all the lights out and then find the weak spots. And then as soon as he finds a spot that's dark, he'll add skylights to that place, because usually it's in the core of the home, whether it be the living room, whether it be a bathroom or areas like that. And that's where our product shines well, pardon the pun. But it certainly provides twice the amount of daylight. And also from a building of high performance as you're doing, the amount of light you're getting for the hole you're cutting is twice as much. So if you think about that, you could reduce the number of windows in the wall by adding skylights, and don't forget about the ventilation capability.
Yeah.
So you really get a lot of bang for your buck.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And when I think of windows, there's things that I enjoy in a home because I like to look out, and it's kind of like the idea of bringing what's outside in.
Sure.
The view, and you feel that the home is larger because you can look out, but you can overdo that too.
Sure.
And here's a way to compensate, with the skylighting.
Yeah, exactly.
You get the light, but not just have to have solid windows everywhere.
Well, and Rich, that's a good point, because we think about it as a design of a house. As the architect, as Jeff Day talked about. The thing about the consideration, you could put windows everywhere, but where do you put your big screen TV? Where do you put your fireplace? So you have to really balance that out. And that's a big struggle that a lot of people have, is where do I put the bed, like in a master bedroom? Do you have all these windows, but then where do you put the master bed and the headboard? So I think what skylights can do is really balance it out, even in a kitchen, where the wife says, I want a lot of cabinets. Well, that's great, but then when you have the windows in the wall, you're kind of limiting the number of cabinets. So in some cases, you're actually better off to put a skylight in in place of a window, just from a standpoint of more bang for the buck, because you're going to get twice the light out of the skylight.
You're selling me, and I'm sure you're selling a lot of our viewers with that as well. There's another product that you handle, and I've been through several homes where your product's been involved, and I remember walking into, I think it was a big walk-in closet, and I thought, well, they left the lights on here, but they didn't. It was your product in the ceiling letting daylight in, and
Yes.
that's called a sun.
Yeah, the VELUX Sun Tunnel.
Sun tunnel.
Sun
Okay.
tunnel, it's a tubular daylighting device. Unlike conventional skylights, the main purpose is to bring in light, because again, VELUX means ventilation and light. It's also about view. So in areas where we see the sun tunnel working well, like you mentioned, in a closet, maybe it's a hallway, maybe it's a small bathroom, but the rule of thumb is if you have an area where there's just no windows at, the sun tunnel is probably your best bet. But if you have windows in a room and you're trying to get more light into the core, a skylight still at the end of the day is the best approach to go with.
But the sun tunnel is complements, right?
It complements.
Yeah.
Right. And it's great in areas where, I've had people walk into, I've got one in my own bathroom. And it's funny, people try to turn the light switch on or turn it off. Hey, I can't turn this light off. And it's natural daylight. And it's a highly reflective tubing material that takes the daylight from outside through a nice engineered flashing system, and then it brings it into the core of the home. In some cases, we can run it up to 20 feet.
Wow.
It's a pretty long run.
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen them done it even in a basement, just to bring daylight into the core.
So they have to have some kind of a chase to get down through,
Right.
to
Like
take
through a
it that
closet or
far,
something.
but
Yeah.
it can be done that way.
Absolutely.
And that's called the VELUX
Sun Tunnel.
Sun Tunnel. Okay, you've got these two great products, the skylighting and the sun tunnels, and we've talked about all the functionality of them and the science behind them and how well they're working and so on and so forth. And I know that one thing in the process of doing this, that the home buyer, the contractor, whomever might be your client, is concerned about always is warranty.
Sure.
How's the company going to stand behind it? Am I going to be safe with this?
Sure.
So you guys have a great warranty with your products, right?
We do. And Rich, the nice thing is the folks at home can understand that 70 plus years of doing this, we know what we're doing. And we're one of the major manufacturers of skylights in the country and probably the world now. And the thing that we take pride in is it's a system. And by using our system, which is the skylight and our flashing kit, we will give the consumer a 10-year no leak warranty on product and installation, which is huge.
Yeah.
How many companies do you know that will warranty the product and labor? Usually it's product. The other thing that we do is we also offer anything that's solar powered or remote controlled. There's a 5-year full warranty on that as well. And we also give, because of the laminated glass option, if you choose the laminated glass, that also is a 10-year hail breakage warranty. So overall, we got you covered.
Yeah, yeah.
We really do.
And you know what I find, and I think this is probably true, that if a product of any type is going to fail, it usually fails early on.
That's correct.
And so when you give that much warranty, and it's operated well all that time, it's probably going to operate a lot longer than that, right?
Absolutely.
And without any problems.
And with the years of our experience, we know our products perform well.
Yeah.
Very good engineering combined with good technology. Some companies focus on the technology, but not necessarily on the actual longevity. We want you to have a good experience long term, and that's why we make.
And that's a part of the high performance home.
That's it.
We talk about energy efficiency, we talk about air quality, and we talk about sustainability. And sustainability is build something that's going to last a long time, and then you don't have to build it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Or keep rebuilding it as the process goes.
Sure.
Well, I've really enjoyed this, and I've gotten a lot smarter. I've gotten some smarter, okay? No, it was very informative to learn about your company, learn about your products, and it's going to give people a lot of things to think about as they're looking to build their own home and have people like Oasis, contract to build their home. They can add these kinds of things that are going to add to the quality of life in the home, but also be a very efficient thing for them as well, cost effective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Mike, we've talked about technology a lot, and part of the technology is the technology that we have where people can find out everything they want to know about your product, goods, and services.
Absolutely.
And so tell us if people want to learn more about VELUX products, how do they do that?
Best way to do it is to go to our website, veluxusa.com. That's veluxusa.com. We've got all kinds of great information, daylighting information. You download literature, look at videos, see how the skylights are installed. It's a wealth of knowledge.
And that's not only for the end user, but that could be for people in the business building. It could be people that are designing homes, architects, whatever. That's a good resource place for them as well, right?
Absolutely. We've got all kinds of downloads for the architects, from specifications, drawings, detailed information. It's pretty much a one-stop shop.
Great. And we always tell our viewers that you can go to oasishomesusa.com and see all of the videos and the information about how to build high performance. And we're all going to be linking together on this stuff so they can jump from one to the other and just learn more and more and more about it, okay?
Sure.
Well, Mike, thanks for coming over and being a part of this and sharing with our viewers today.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and again, thank you very much for having me.
Great.